So, Katoonster, how do you feel about this brand spanking new setup I got going on right here?
You realize that by getting other YouTubers to voice an inanimate object that represent an animal, you will just be further perpetuating the concept of being a clone of Chris Raygun, a concept that's already been made clear by your editing and personality, albeit miles less successful and ambitious.
Oh man, now that we're finally getting settled into 2019, I think it's really important for this community and us creators to really, contextualize the site for a moment and look back where we were a year ago to really see how many improvements we've made over that time.
Hey, I really hate to say this. I think there's someone hanging right there.
Yep. I thought so. YouTube has always had a certain appeal to it that is constantly consuming more and more unique visitors on a daily basis that separate its audience from the general demographic to its modern-day contemporaries like Snapchat or Instagram, or even its competitors of the time such as MySpace or Facebook. Why is that? Well, it's a simple equation, really. Above all else, YouTube quickly became the first and only mainstream video platform on the internet, and to many people, that was exciting. But why was it exciting, you may ask? Well, it wasn't the concept of video sharing in itself, but rather the limitless possibilities as to what content you could consume, as well as all the different personalities you'd find on a website that promoted indie creators from all across the world. This, first and foremost, is the entire appeal that boosted YouTube into the mainstream. YouTube didn't have the benefit of having the nightly show on the trending tab. It didn't have the benefit of companies and corporations inhibiting 35 spots out of 50 on the top most subscribed channels of all time. YouTube had to gradually grow its audience, and in order to do that, they had to embrace their culture. This was done by implementing algorithms early on that supported both a mixture of new small upcoming content creators and big powerhouses that made them money, like Smosh or What the Buck. Does anyone even remember that guy anyways? Regardless, systems were in place that allowed for these individual communities to thrive in their own right without additional supervision. And while that might not sound like a smart idea, giving that amount of freedom and creativity to literally anyone, the thing is, YouTube wasn't mainstream yet. It was by no means obscure, but it hadn't breached the levels of cultural significance quite yet that it's since then obtained. Back then, it was as simple as, we've given you the tools to create and the ability to succeed. Enjoy. Now, don't get me wrong, YouTube wasn't flawless by any means. They've made plenty of mistakes during this period of time that's since been referred to as the golden era of YouTube, but most of them would pale in comparison to most of the executive decisions made under the leadership of Susan Wojcicki. To understand the managerial shifts that took place whenever Susan Wojcicki became the CEO of YouTube, we have to look into the importance and significance of YouTube nowadays. While it might be a little too easy to dismiss YouTube from serving any legitimate purpose in our society due to the nature of social media or how much petty drama there is, whenever you actually dig into it, YouTube is at the forefront of internet culture, and internet culture is at the forefront of entertainment. So much so that older media like films or television have been attempting to replicate that same sense of entertainment that one might get out of their favorite online personality for years now. Due to the technological advancements making the internet more accessible than ever, it's also made internet culture far vaster and mainstream, and in the process has boosted YouTube to an international status. It is from these very same circumstances that we, the collective of YouTube, have been asking the same question for years now. Does YouTube really care about their creators? Here's the current situation we find ourselves in. Due to all this exposure into the mainstream, YouTube has now become a powerhouse that's completely monopolized online video sharing to such an extent that even competitors like Vimeo are hardly even considered competition. Because there is no real competition, YouTube no longer needs to rely on the demand of their consumers because no matter what, there is no other product that the consumers can easily turn to if they feel like they've been wronged by the company. On top of that, this industry has already proven itself to be successful enough to where it no longer needs to profit off of the system set in place to keep the general community circulating, thus rendering these previous algorithms obsolete. Now don't get me wrong, there are still algorithms in place to help you succeed, but on top of trying to make some money, you are now also competing against T-Series, Justin Bieber, WWE, Ed Sheeran, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, Rihanna, The Ellen Show, Taylor Swift Vivo, Rihanna Vivo, Eminem Vivo. The point I'm getting at is that YouTube has since then relied on investors and corporations above all else. Instead of giving creators a sense of freedom, they've since then reduced the site to make huge powerhouses that make them the most money the forefront of what represents YouTube. And this is where our story begins. The Suicide Forest stunt is an event that needs no further observation due to how much coverage it received when it initially happened. However, it plays one of the biggest roles over YouTube versus its community, and further begs the question on if YouTube does actually care about their community. What the original video showcased was Logan Paul walking into the famous Japanese suicide forest, as it's often referred by, and over the duration of his stay, filmed a dead body and proceeded to poke jabs at the corpse, completely uncensored, mind you. It was a pretty open and shut case, and while I could dive into the topic in more detail, I don't feel like it's entirely relevant to the rest of the story. What is relevant, however, is the fact that this video, which had went up against the terms and services of YouTube by showing an uncensored dead body, was in fact put up at #1 trending on the entire site merely a day after it aired. The thing that's important to note is that while the trending hashtag may potentially be automated in itself, the trending tab is completely different. The trending tab has been proven to be manually selected, at least to some degree, which explains why certain videos will have the tag of being at this position of trending. However, on the actual trending tab itself, that same video never appears. This in itself is troublesome, but what's even worse is the lack of communication on YouTube's behalf and everything that preceded this event beforehand. Almost a year prior, YouTube acted immediately in response to PewDiePie being slammed in a Wall Street Journal article that claimed him to be a Nazi. It should be known that during this debacle, the Wall Street Journal was taking all the evidence they had against PewDiePie out of context. In fact, PewDiePie, as well as thousands of other YouTubers, even pointed this out, but regardless, YouTube continued to double down on their decision to cancel his YouTube Red series after they had already filmed everything for it. Fast forward to YouTube Rewind 2017. It sucked. But there was more behind it than just that. Emma Blackery was a notable figure during all of this due to making a public documentation of her experiences on the set for YouTube Rewind 2017. While most of the video was her talking about how shitty the staff treat the individual content creators, one of the more notable quotes that came from the video acted as a large insight into YouTube's general treatment over their content creators.
Quite frankly, if you're a small creator, no, actually scrap that. If you're not Liza Koshy or Jake Paul, YouTube doesn't give a fuck about you. Doesn't give a fuck about me. Doesn't give a fuck about Tom Scar, PewDiePie, Marzia, PJ. It doesn't give a fuck about you unless you have TV potential. Okay?
This was only released a month before the Logan Paul incident, and in that very moment when the internet exploded to expose the young vlogger over showing a dead body to an impressionably young audience, that feeling increased tenfold. The fact that YouTube didn't make a formal response until 9 days after the incident had occurred is absolutely insulting to the entire community, and the fact that YouTube handpicked it to be #1 trending for a day is only salt in the wound. A title that probably would have persisted there if Logan Paul didn't remove the video as soon as he did. Furthermore, YouTube didn't even cancel Logan Paul's upcoming movie, The Thinning 2. In the instance where a famous news source was taking PewDiePie out of context for their hit piece, YouTube instantly canceled his show that had been in production for months. But now when it came to someone who made them money who broke the terms and services in the worst possible way, he was not only highlighted by being given the opportunity to be on trending, but his movie was only delayed until the controversy died down. This not only made the entire community suspicious over the site playing favorites, which immediately created a border between the community and the higher-ups, but this also initiated a scare on YouTube's behalf that would now set the rest of the events in 2018 to come following after, thus bringing us into the next chapter of this saga. Now, this isn't the first time YouTube's tried to declare war on controversy, if you will. Back in late 2016, YouTube attempted to declare war on controversy with such amazing programs such as the egregious community guideline change. You know, the very same guidelines that, and I quote, banned controversial or sensitive subjects and events, including subjects related to war, political conflicts, natural disasters, and tragedies, even if graphic imagery is not shown. That's fucking fantastic. Or the widely infamous YouTube Heroes program, which encouraged people to mass flag videos and rewarded them for this, even if the videos flagged didn't even go against the community guidelines. Both of which involved tons of channels getting randomly demonetized, which fucked pretty heavily with their entire livelihood due to YouTube's incompetence to enforce their own rules or to even implement new systems without everything falling apart like a fucking game of Jenga. But while these were pretty big events for their time, the important thing to remember is that eventually YouTube unfucked itself. YouTube guidelines were eventually updated again, and YouTube Heroes was just flat out dropped by YouTube, and not to be ever mentioned again, making it very clear that YouTube wanted to disassociate with the program in question. Whether that be from public outcry or something within the system, they dropped it. While YouTube was trying to combat controversy in both 2016 and 2018, the ultimate difference here is that when it came to responding to the controversy in 2016, it wasn't YouTube's fault until they finally pitched in. From that point, it became YouTube's fault because they showed us how incompetent and incapable they were at handling the situation, and instead pitched into a system that put the community into an even worse environment than what it started off as. In 2018, however, it was YouTube's fault. Right from the very start. YouTube were both the ones who put Logan Paul's video on trending tab and the ones who decided to wait 9 days to make an official response. Fact is, YouTube probably initially disregarded it because they saw it as another Heroes incident, where eventually with time the controversy would just die out and would remain an issue exclusive to the site, and it wouldn't be a big deal for the site's image to the general public. But the vital aspect here is the fact that they failed to contextualize the scale of it all. Logan Paul is a creator who largely appeals to an audience of impressionable children and was a creator who was widely advertised throughout YouTube itself due to bringing in a lot of cash for the site. From these two elements alone, it was very obvious how dangerous it would be to the site to further press this video as if it were any other Logan Paul video, when it wasn't. And despite YouTube finally making a response, they made it too late. By that point, YouTube's reputation had been damaged even more so as articles and news pieces had already been sent out. This sent YouTube diving even deeper into a downward spiral, as they had already been hit with the adpocalypse a year or so prior and had already been giving into the demands that older media had. Okay, so as if there weren't enough fucking interruptions already, it's important to establish the elongated battle against old media and new media. Put in layman terms, new media is just a new format of entertainment introduced into society due to some technological achievement that soon gets popular enough to overthrow the predominant form of entertainment that preceded it. After all, the term isn't video killed the radio star for nothing. In response, old media will use guerrilla warfare-esque tactics to deflate their new, trendier competition. This isn't the first time old media had targeted new media in an attempt to deflate the popularity of upcoming entertainment. Whether these are protests against the insurgence of edgier adult television like The Simpsons, or court hearings about Grand Theft Auto in the early 2000s, it's always happening. People are scared of losing their jobs, their livelihoods, and as a result, get desperate to ruin the reputation of the next big thing that they fear of being replaced with. On top of that, there's also been a massive transitional gap from analog to digital, meaning that a lot of people still prefer to stick by what I like to call analog entertainment, giving older media that advantage of still playing a larger part in modern society. It's from this massive transitional gap that old media still holds a surprisingly big impact in our culture to this day, and they use this power to attack digital entertainment. Unfortunately, the CEO of the forefront of all digital entertainment lacks the determination and persistence that, say, someone at the head of the Wall Street Journal has, who by this point are so consumed in trying to deflate the reputation of someone who has a larger cultural presence than what they have, that they will resort to hit pieces on that targeted person, blatantly lying to the general public in an attempt to ruin the target's public presence. This is where Susan's personality traits begin to show. Once again, instead of standing by the community of YouTube and embracing its culture, she directly opposed them, thus dividing the community from the higher-ups and thus setting in stone the idea that old media has power over new media. A conflict that will haunt everyone involved with YouTube for years to come. Okay, so by this point, Susan had royally fucked over the site. YouTube was no longer just another neutral party who had a bad idea of solving the issue. They were the issue. They were the ones who instigated the controversy from the very start of it all. And with all the negative press that had been tacked onto the platform for promoting Logan Paul's corpse catastrophe, they were now forced into full-scale, all-out attack mode. According to Newsweek.com, from July to September of 2018, 58 million videos had been removed alongside 224 million comments. How are they capable of doing this themselves, you may ask? It's a simple answer, really. They weren't. They implemented bots in place that targeted specific tags of controversial figures or topics to get the job done. Once again, it wasn't the first time they've done something like this. They did the same thing late 2016 when the Nutshack became a meme, and they saw it as a problematic spam. And in even more extreme instances, they completely removed Leafy's ability to get on the suggested tab, further compromising his growth as a content creator. So in the eyes of YouTube, this was all just protocol to take out the trash. But one minor speed bump in the road may have set them back a little. That is, of course, if you consider 300K a small setback. One of the immediate consequences for depending on the legitimacy of a bot is the unfair takedown in one's video due to a certain tag being implemented, even if the video in question doesn't actually break the rules or regulations on the platform. And that's exactly what happened. One of the more notable upcoming YouTubers in the commentary community, The Right Opinion, being a normal victim to this abuse of the system. TRO was hit not once, not twice, but 3 times in 3 individual cases. The first offender was whenever YouTube age-restricted the video discussing the eligibility of pineapple on pizza, which would later get unrestricted, but nonetheless still didn't justify the original age restriction. Only 3 days following, on December 18th, YouTube then proceeded to remove his video on Logan Paul, claiming it was being reviewed for violating the terms and services. By this point, it should be made clear that this was a YouTuber known for making documentary videos on controversial figures and topics on the platform, meaning that the context behind all his videos, aside from the pineapple on pizza one, is entirely for educational purposes, and under that pretense does not justify taking down these videos. To make matters worse, YouTube later deemed the video as an act against the rules of the site after supposedly reviewing it, and would later remove the video in its entirety. December 30th, only 12 days following the last video's termination, YouTube would then strike down his 3rd targeted video, his documentary diving into the psychology behind Daddy05. YouTube once again claimed to review it and later came up stating that the video violated the site's terms and services, leaving a community strike against the content creator. While this had been his first community strike he received, from my knowledge, by this point people had suspicions on whether TRO was being targeted or not, a fear that was very much relevant at the time it happened, and a fear that was further pressed by the community's mistrust in the people in charge. A day later, later, his Daddy05 video was put back up on the site, but not without his initial appeal being rejected first, and an age restriction slapped on top of the newly approved documentary, meaning he could no longer make ad revenue from said video, which removed the community strike from his channel. However, he has yet to get his Logan Paul video back as of the time making this video, and unfortunately, the injustice doesn't end there either. On top of simply taking down videos, they took down entire channels. Mumkey Jones and Nick the Smoker come to mind when in reference to unfair takedowns. And while Nick was able to get his channel back shortly after this whole incident, Jones was in a constant struggle to get someone at the head of YouTube to actually listen to him and to get his entire career and livelihood back on track. But, unlike Nick, there was no happy ending for Jones. At the time of deletion, Mumkey Jones had been hit with 6 strikes on 2 different channels at the exact same time. One of which being on a privated video that nobody else could have possibly viewed, alerting Jones, as well as everybody else, to the fact that this was a bot responsible for all of this. To top it off, nearly every video that was hit was tied back to Elliot Rodger. Whether that be inflicted in the title or in the tags, Elliot Rodger was a clear target for this particular assault. However, the issue stems from the fact that these videos targeted never actually violated YouTube's terms and services. Similar to TRO, Mumkey Jones was either making a documentary for educational purposes or was satirizing the infamous shooter and his flawed perception of reality. There was never any violent imagery shown or implied, unlike what YouTube said there was upon reviewing his content. Nor was there any sexual content of any kind or implied violence of any kind. But what may be the worst factor in all of this, and the most essential aspect of this entire video, is what took place after Mumkey lost his channel. In case the site wasn't already in bad condition, YouTube decided to target Mumkey Jones and quickly delete all of his alternative accounts while also refusing him access to talk to a higher up to get this shit sorted out. It completely shut off any communications for this content creator who greatly contributed to the community he was associated with to get his job back, which he wrongfully lost. What started off as a slight misstep made by the automated system quickly turned into one of the biggest events of YouTube in 2018. And yes, that's including PewDiePie vs. T-Series and YouTube Rewind. By this point, it was made very clear that every decision YouTube made outside of who the bot specifically targeted was deliberate. And considering how content creators and the community as a whole already lost their trust in the platform from the Logan Paul incident from earlier that year, it wasn't looking very prosperous. Notable creators like PewDiePie and Implement would speak up against this issue as a critique on the site and the direction it's currently heading in. But YouTube didn't care, simply because YouTube doesn't care. The sad truth to it all is that YouTube will continue refusing to care unless something changes. This greatly affects not only media culture in its entirety, but the natural generational gap between old media and new media. This also drastically alters how the general demographic of YouTube functions. It used to be a naturally occurring event in which, as time passed, the demographic of YouTube would change their demands towards the next interesting and fresh creator, and from that would spawn other channels similar to that one and would quickly overtake the site. For example, when JonTron entered the scene, it allowed for an entire brand of reactionary game reviews to take off as its own little genre, and offered a new sense of humor and a unique personality to latch onto, which would be later followed up by channels like Kadikarus, Peanut Butter Gamer, Pro Jared, The Completionist, etc. Or whenever more ironic channels would arise in 2015 like Filthy Frank, iDubbbz, Mumkey Jones, Leafy, Pyrocynical, etc. These were natural shifts between audiences that after a while demand something new, something interesting, something they hadn't seen before, something that YouTube had no say in previously. Now, however, Susan is directly affecting the natural development of that cycle. In fact, she is so persistent in this that YouTube staff have now resorted to harassing Mumkey Jones and his friends and family. So, in wake of 3 channel terminations and the writing of the script, something interesting happened. Mumkeys foregone an elongated battle in order to get the community of YouTube to rise up against this mistake, and during these attempts released a video through his website called YouTube Termination Survival Guide, encouraging everyone who was capable of re-uploading the video as much as possible. One of the people who re-uploaded it was Jones's girlfriend, who ran a channel called Jungle Jimmy. This channel did re-upload Jones's content often, however, the channel was not directly tied back to Jones in any way, shape, or form, and both Jones and his girlfriend made it very clear that the channel was not his. The channel was not owned by him, the channel was not managed by him. I mean, for fuck's sake, this is a clip taken from YouTube Termination Survival Guide.
Hey everybody, this is Sheepover, my girlfriend, and she said she had something she wanted to show us, and it looks like it's a YouTube channel called Jungle Jimmy. Now, Sheepover, is this your YouTube channel?
Yes.
Did you make this?
Yes.
Do you manage this YouTube channel?
Yes.
And you're the one with access to this channel.
Yeah.
Now, do I have access to this channel?
No.
Do I know the password to this channel?
Nope.
Do I have any way of getting on this YouTube channel called Jungle Jimmy?
No siree.
So it's 100% your channel that you own and operate and manage.
It's mine.
So what you're saying is if people want to watch videos that I make on YouTube, they can on this channel called Jungle Jimmy that I do not own, operate, or manage. Is that right?
That's right.
Huh. That's very, very interesting.
There was never any original content directly from Mumkey. The closest thing there was a video that came from his site exclusively. Yet still, merely days later, Jungle Jimmy was terminated. Okay, so before we progress any further on that note, let's look into the video itself. YouTube Termination Survival Guide. In this, Mumkey constantly insisted that YouTube was well aware of the decisions they made and had been deliberately lying to Jones and his fan base the whole time in an attempt to deplatform him. While I personally don't believe it was all intentional from the start, it certainly became intentional. I've already mentioned YouTube's deliberate attacks on Mumkey by doubling down on his false bans and banning his third account that was supposed to act as his main channel until he got his other 2 channels back, but he didn't, and quickly lost his third channel to false strikes. This certainly was sketchy, but while Mumkey was getting blacklisted from YouTube, the debate still went on over Twitter. Barely. After a while, Team YouTube refused to respond to Jones and his fans, and would cease to even bother mentioning him or responding to his attempts to get back on the site, effectively snuffing out his voice by muting his online presence. But it got worse from there. As I previously said, YouTube would later get rid of the Jungle Jimmy account, the account that had absolutely nothing to do with Mumkey directly. At the same time, YouTube also demonetized The State of YouTube, a podcast ran by friends of Mumkey's that regularly starred him. Once again, neither of these accounts ever actually went against the terms and services, furthermore entertaining the concept of YouTube intentionally harassing Jones and everybody associated with him. On top of that, there are even reports of people who tried uploading Mumkey's YouTube Termination Survival Guide instantly getting their YouTube accounts deactivated after the video's been uploaded. And it makes sense considering how YouTube's content ID system has gotten so advanced over the years that it can detect whenever videos are duplicating each other, which is why you can't upload the same video twice on your channel. This was a pretty blunt way of conveying that Jones and the people on the platform who associated with Jones in any way, shape, or form was not welcome. And unfortunately, in a sense, it kinda worked. Keemstar, a YouTuber known for reporting drama in YouTube news, openly admitted to not being able to help Jones in any way, shape, or form due to YouTube's previous incidents with a shooting at headquarters. And while Philip DeFranco hasn't said anything publicly on the matter, others believe the lack of coverage on his channel may be intentional due to YouTube's strict no Mumkey policy. Unfortunately, I can't say the future is very bright for YouTube at the moment, especially considering the audience reception over YouTube Rewind. Wait. Hold on a second. What's that? Alright, ladies and gentlemen, please excuse my absence. I'm gonna be back in just a second. Don't worry. Just give me a second.
Hey everybody, I've never filmed a stupid Twitter video like this before. My hair is still messed up because we filmed a Jungle Jimmy thing a couple hours ago, but I just wanted to say that I just got off the phone with Keemstar, and he watched my video about all my strikes and why they were invalid, and he said he's going to cover it on his show probably tomorrow. So if we could all just lay off of Keemstar. He actually did the investigation, and he's going to talk about it. I don't know if he's going to talk about it.
This is definitely
100% the way that I would.
That I
but we should lay off of him.
A bad couple of days for Monkey.
Yeah, he's a
and
good
for
guy.
YouTube in general,
all over again.
It's kind of sad. Like this.
In the meantime,
situation that you're going through is actually
I
is
feel
going
a bit
to affect
overwhelmed by so many people. I mean, the Amazing Atheist, the guy who I watched a lot
I don't
when
know
I was
what
in
good
high school. He just posted
my
a video
channels
about
both
it,
of my
which
channels,
is-
yeah, I had
I never thought I'd be
main
the focus
channel,
of
Monkey
one of his
Jones
videos.
several larger
There's a good
channels.
chance,
Mine have already talked
and
about
I don't know if I should say this. There's a good chance that maybe the next Q News might talk about this, but I haven't spoken to PewDiePie myself.
a lot of community
but I have
guidelines prior to him being
good
censored.
authority that he is informed about it.
YouTube
so.
really wants it.
But really, I'm getting 1 million seconds.
But he has a channel.
So I
He
had
has one
two
channel.
opening them, shooting them,
and that's
Now he has
all
already both hit with 3 strikes all at once. What was it? 6 strikes total.
What were they?
Another channel.
If anything,
One day,
super
some Maryland
important
movies.
that I need to know.
So no real 3 strikes are out. Just hey, all 3 strikes happen at once. You're gone.
And I completely understand that.
3 strikes here, 3 strikes there, gone.
But the problem is, it's so important. Like, I think a lot of people
I kind of heard about that.
how important this really is. Not only because something really terrible has happened, but just because it expresses
I've seen
mindset
play out before.
Nobody knows if this is going to continue. Nobody knows if this witch hunt will target anyone else, or if another genre or another.
Okay, so I might have been wrong.